All right, going straight into this Kennedy 2024 on their website. Let me go to share this tab here. This is the new press release right here. Biden is the real spoiler. Kennedy, only candidate who can beat Trump. Let's go and take a look at that. Enlarge that a little bit. All right. This is from New York, New York. And we all know that's where Kennedy and Trump are. And Kennedy has a very select window right now. For Kennedy in New York, this is a very important time. He has a very short amount of time to get his name on the ballot in New York. So obviously his focus seems to be right here, as it should be. This is good. This is what he says. This is what the press release says. Independent presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. today announced the results of the largest presidential election poll of the 2024 election at a press event in Brooklyn, New York. The poll, conducted by John Zogby Strategies, surveyed more than 26,000 likely voters with a margin of error of plus minus 0.6%. Kennedy and his campaign manager presented key findings from the poll that included comparative results of head-to-head matchups between President Biden and Trump, between Kennedy and President Biden, and between Kennedy and President Trump. The results were provocative. In a head-to-head matchup, Trump defeats Biden handily. Biden beats President Trump in a two-way race by a tight margin. In a two-way race between Kennedy and President Biden, Kennedy wins in a landslide, a Fleetwood Mac landslide. I don't think anyone is surprised by that, but it's the video that is kind of surprising to me. And I don't want to spoil it, but I do want to get to it. And that's going to be the main focus of this podcast episode here. So, based on that, I am going to start playing some of what Kennedy says here. So, I'm going to jump over here, and start playing some of this. This came out today, and I was very enlightened by it. So let's get right to it. Where are we at here? Okay, so it kind of begins right around here.
Could make it for this big event. I'd like to introduce Will Boothby. He's the Northeast Regional Director. Will.
All right, I think I know what's going on.
Hi, everyone. It has been my absolute honor to be a part of this petition drive here in New York. And before we start, I just need to thank the volunteers for their tireless efforts going out day after day after day to do the Herculean task of 45,000 valid signatures in 45 days. As many of you might already know, our goal is almost double that, 90 to 100,000. And the reason for that is after we collect all these signatures, we expect a team of lawyers to be deployed to try to disqualify them, throw them out, and get rid of all of our hard work. But I'm here to say that we are going to be absolutely impervious to any legal challenge based on the rate that we're collecting signatures at this time. So thank you very much. This has been an absolute honor for me. Thank you to all the volunteers, and I'm proud to welcome Mr. Kennedy to the stage. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Will Boothby, and thank you to all the volunteers who've given their heart and soul to this effort to get us on the ballot in New York State, something that was considered impossible. But I think we already have enough ballots or signatures to qualify, and we're continuing to collect them until we at least double our requirements. So thank you.
And that is impressive right there. Just want to stop right there. That is a very impressive thing. So basically, Kennedy is saying here, they got it. They got what they needed. This is great news. Obviously, they're going to have some that are going to get thrown out. Where have we seen this? Let's look at 2020. Well, we're going to throw out these votes, throw out those votes. And it's kind of the opposite of what was happening in 2020, where they were just kind of, let's put everything in there. But all of a sudden, now that Kennedy is running, it's very important to validate not these votes, but just the people that want to sign up to get Kennedy's name on the ballot. They are expecting the opposition to try to disqualify the signatures. What are we going to see in the 2024 presidential voting booth? Where are they going to try to pull this same tactic where they're going to try to disqualify votes all of a sudden in 2024 and reverse everything, where it's like, oh, 2020 was the most perfect election ever. And here we are seeing with Kennedy, in all of these different states, they are already trying to disqualify the signatures from real people like us who just want to see Kennedy's name on the ballot. They don't want that. They don't want that. And you can see what the game plan is, what the game plan was. You can look back at 2020 and see it's the same things that they're talking about. That's why when they talk about that we needed this many votes, but we're going to keep getting, they need more votes. We don't want those votes to just stop right there. We don't, and I keep saying votes. They just need people to sign up to get Kennedy's name on the ballot. But they want to make sure that they have more people than enough to sign up, because they are expecting people to try to disqualify the signatures of U.S. citizens, people who can actually vote, who can legally vote. They want to disqualify those. But in 2020, none of that mattered for actual votes. But just to get Kennedy's name on the ballot, you can see the opposition that he is already facing, the uphill battle that he is facing, that Team Kennedy is moving forward on, and they are not going to be deterred by any of these shenanigans that are going on. Kennedy is doing everything and will do everything, and his team will do everything they possibly can to make sure that his name is on the ballot in November in the 2024 presidential election. This is what it's all about. All right, let me keep going. Let me stop ranting. Let's keep moving on. And I think he has a little bit of issue.
We're missing a slide.
This reminds me of my first time I did PowerPoint.
Bridget, will you just check the slides? I'll make do without this.
He's like, let's do it. Let's roll.
It is.
Let's just do it. Look at that.
All right, these are just some recent polls that we actually just pulled up this morning, but 74% of Americans are dissatisfied with the way things are going.
I think the only thing that I want to say is, obviously, I don't really like polls. I don't agree with polls. I don't pay too much attention to polls. It's always, well, we looked at this number of people, and these polls are always pulling from a very small percentage of people within a very small area. So I don't know, but I'm not a mathematician or anything like that. I haven't really studied the polls and all that. I know I've never been involved in any poll that has ever came out. So I don't put too much weight into these polls, but I take very seriously what Kennedy says.
United States, in 2013, 85% of young people in our country said that they were very proud to be American. The same poll taken in 2023, so about four and a half months ago, only 18% of Americans say they're proud to be American, of young people. So somehow during the terms of the last two presidents, most of this generation has lost faith in our country and lost hope for their own future. And 74% of Americans say that they're not satisfied with the way things are going in our country, that we're on the wrong path. There are 20 or 30 other polls, we looked at them this morning, that say the same thing with different numbers. President Biden, President Trump acknowledge these polls, they blame each other. President Biden says it's President Trump's fault. President Trump says it's President Biden's fault. The two of them presided over the country when they saw this vast decline in faith in America. And what I would say is that neither President Trump or President Biden are capable of giving us the kind of leadership to change these data points. President, and some of you who have been on the campaign trail with me have heard me say over the past few weeks that President Trump and President Biden are very, very different. Their dispositions, their personalities, the way that they approach life, the way they approach other people, the way they present themselves. And ideologically, they couldn't be more different. But in terms of the issues that actually keep them apart, it's a very, very narrow Overton window. It's abortion, it's guns, it's the border security, it's transgender issues, and a few more. They're all the culture war issues. These are all important issues, but they're not the existential issues that will change this metric. The issue that actually gives people hope in their country, young people hope in our country, that restores our moral authority, that restores the industrial base of our country. And I would say to you that neither President Trump or President Biden has the capacity to change those things. One example is the budget deficit, $34 trillion. Over the past 100 days, President Biden has added $1 trillion to that. Within 5 years, every 50 cents out of every tax dollar that we collect is going to go to servicing the debt. Within 10 years, 100%. And neither President Biden nor President Trump during the entire course of this campaign has explained what they're going to do to change that. The issue of the polarization, which is tearing our country apart, this toxic division that's worse than at any time since the American Civil War. President Trump can't change it, and President Biden can't change it because they're part of it. They're feeding it. They're telling us to hate each other. They're telling their followers to be fearful, to be hateful towards the other guy's followers. So they're not going to change it. The winding down of the war machine, the unraveling, President Biden has no inclination or desire to wind it down. For him, it is, and for his entire career, it's been the premier, the lead foreign policy tool. President Trump has promised repeatedly that he will wind it down. But look what happened last week. He colluded with Speaker Johnson and with President Biden to send $61 billion to Ukraine. Oh, it's not going to end. When he was in office, although he promised to wind down the war machine, he brought in John Bolton to run NSA. He brought in Mike Pompeo to run the State Department and CIA. These are swamp creatures. This is not about draining the swamp. Neither of them has the capacity or the inclination to stop our government from lying to us. If my first day in office, I'm going to issue an executive order announcing that any government official or employee who lies to the American public in conjunction with his official duties will immediately lose his job. Oh, if President Trump or President Biden had the inclination to do that, they would have done it when they were in office. The chronic disease epidemic that is now debilitating 60% of our kids, $4.3 trillion a year, 5 times our military budget. Neither of them has made any, both of them presided over it. Neither of them has made any move during all the time they were president to try to address this issue. The destruction of our soils, the addiction to processed foods. There are 1,000 ingredients in our foods that are banned in Europe. And they're feeding this chronic disease epidemic. So these are the issues that are absolutely existential to our country. And Americans are tired of them. And President Trump and President Biden have already shown they have no capacity to change them. And those are the issues, or some of them, that prompted me to announce almost a little over a year ago my run for president of the United States. Now, over the past couple of weeks, as my poll numbers have continued to climb, I've been accused by the press and by President Biden and now President Trump of being a spoiler. So we actually did a poll to test whether that accusation has any basis. And that's the poll that we're going to talk about today. Let's first look at this. This is the dictionary definition of a spoiler. A spoiler is a political candidate who cannot win. Number one, who prevents another candidate from winning by taking away their votes. So those are the two conditions that you need to fulfill if you're going to win the designation as a spoiler. Now, I can't win this, and I'm going to show you why. First, and we just did a poll, a typical poll that you see from Quinnipiac, New York Times, CNN, Gallup, has between 1,000 and 3,000, 3,600 people that they survey. These are the polls that you all report on. We did a poll, 50 states, 26,000 people, 10 times what anybody else does. This poll typically costs between $200,000 and $500,000. And it gives us a very, very clear picture of who can win this election and who cannot. And I am going to invite my campaign manager, Amaryllis Kennedy, up to explain this poll to you, and then I'm going to come back and make our big announcement.
This is good for me, for someone who doesn't really like the polls, doesn't agree with them, doesn't trust them, doesn't believe they hold much weight. But he's doing everything that he possibly can to show here. And what we're going to see are some very interesting numbers, some very interesting stats, and some conclusions that may be a little premature from my point of view. But I understand where he's coming from. I have watched this before, so it does give, I do have a better understanding of what we're going to see, what we're going to hear. And my concern is that he's a little bit too focused on the polls. We'll see. Just 26,000 people. It's a 50-state survey. This is a
Hi, guys.
Big deal.
Thank you so much for being here. Oh, hey, Bobby, can I have the clicker? Brilliant. So as you just heard, there are a few things that set this survey apart from all of the other polls that you're going to see floating out there in the media.
I sure hope
One
so.
of them is the sample size. Whoops, hold on, go back. So as you can see here, more than 10x most of the other polls that are out there. And of course, the more people who respond, the more accurate the results. So most of these polls have margins of error in the 2%, 3%, sometimes even 4% range. The Zogby Strategies 50-state poll, 26,408 respondents, and the margin of error is 0.6%. The other thing that sets this aside is that rather than being a national poll, this is a 50-state poll. And the distinction there is that there are respondents across every single one of the states with enough coverage in every state to be able to actually allocate the electoral votes as if the election happened today. Now, why does that matter? As you all know, we live in the electoral college system. They call it winner takes all because the candidate who gets the plurality in each vote, with the exception of Maine and Nebraska, get all the electoral votes. That seems obvious to all of us. Everyone knows it in politics, everyone knows it in the media, and yet still point to national polls as an indication of who's going to win. Now, to understand why that is problematic, I think these are reversed on the clicker. Harken back, if you will, to 2016. This is the most recent example you'll all remember of a candidate winning the national electorate popular vote and losing the White House. Imagine that you had the most accurate national poll that has ever been done, a 0.0% margin of error that was taken the day before the 2016 election. It would have told you that Hillary Clinton was going to be the president, and most of them did. And it would have been wrong, and most of them were. Donald Trump ended up winning that election. We all know the rest. First Trump presidency as a result of the Electoral College. And so, maybe that was the reason that the DNC made their fateful decision to back Hillary Clinton instead of Bernie Sanders, who could have actually beaten Trump. But in any event, we are here today to make sure that America doesn't make the same mistake again.
Bernie Sanders.
To do that, we need to
Really,
be able
does
to
anyone-
actually tally up the electoral votes.
Do you really think? I'd be curious to see what people's thoughts are on that. Do you really think Bernie Sanders could have beaten Donald Trump? I don't think anyone could have beaten Donald Trump in 2016. I don't know. But they have the numbers, they have the stats, they have the record. They know what they're talking about. I'm just speculating. I'm just guessing here. I take everything they're saying here seriously.
Rather than just do a national head-to-head race. So with that, I'm going to show some data. I want you guys to know that there is going to be a QR code and a website at the end. It is going to have all of the 50 state data for all of the horse races I'm about to show you, high resolution graphics, so on. So don't feel like you need to write down numbers. And we'll give you guys a chance to digest it all and then can answer your questions over the next week or two. So first, based on this 26,000 person, 0.6% margin of error poll, if the election were to be held today, and the only two candidates were President Biden and President Trump, this is what CNN's magic wall would look like tomorrow. President Trump wins handily by a 50 electoral vote margin. And congratulations, you have woken up in a world where you have 4 more years of chaos and division and arguing with your neighbors, massive inflationary spending. And, if there's another emergency, maybe another round of shutting down all of America's businesses.
Oh, come on now. Now we're getting a little... This is the politics side here where it's a fear tactic. Kennedy has been very good about not spreading the fear. Oh, don't vote for the fear, right? Don't fear the spear. Don't fear the reaper. You do not vote for fear. So this is where Kennedy's own campaign manager here is spreading a little fear. If Trump wins, well, we're going to have 4 more years of this, of that. How about let's do the poll and compare. How do people feel? Were they better off under Trump than where they are now? Were they better off under Biden? Under Barack Obama? Were they better off under Trump, Barack Obama, George Bush, Bill Clinton, George Bush Sr., and on and on and on. How far back do we have to go to say, well, no, we were better off under this president than under Trump? Would you have to go all the way back to a Kennedy? Is that how far we have to go back? Because if that's how far we have to go back, then let's get another Kennedy in there. But if that's how far we have to go back, and that also shows that President Trump turned a corner that no other president could. And it's a big, big corner that should be recognized, and President Trump should be given credit for that. So I don't like this fear tactic or this, we're going to have more arguing. There's going to be more arguing. And the Kennedy family, she's a part of the Kennedy family, so she knows that. The arguing is already there. It's going to be there. The arguing is not going to go away. The division is not going to get better if we put Kennedy in there, because his own family is divided against him, because there are some of them, 5 of them, that work for Joe Biden. So the handoff to Biden, from Biden to Kennedy, is going to be a lot softer than the handoff from Biden to Trump. Because you may have Donald Trump who doesn't want Joe Biden at his inauguration. And Biden will be given 2 different options. Biden can say, I'm not going to President Trump's 2024 presidential inauguration because he didn't come to mine in 2020. Or there could be other reasons for that. Those would be the 2 reasons. I would be shocked, very shocked, if Joe Biden shows up at the when President Trump is put back into office, June 21st, 2025. I'd be very shocked if that happens. Not saying it won't happen, not saying it's not possible, but I would be very, very shocked. And Biden may do it just to act like he is the bigger man. I did it. Trump didn't do it. Every other president has done it except for Trump, to separate himself from what Trump did. I'm going to go back to some more of this. But again, we're back to the fear.
So, given that the DNC was shown over and over during the primary, polling that demonstrated that RFK could beat Donald Trump in a general, and still chose to back President Biden,
Good point.
what is their plan for beating Donald Trump in November?
They don't have one.
Well, maybe they plan to, I don't know, weaponize the courts and pull a hat trick and force Trump out of the race. It's unlikely, but let's say they did. What would happen? So we ran that scenario too. And here's what the magic wall and
Before we show that magic wall, that's pretty interesting. And it's interesting that they use the term the magic wall. But I feel like the Kennedy campaign understands too that all of the things they're doing against President Trump is not going to work. All of these court cases and all that stuff is not going to work. It's making Trump more popular. It's making him stand out more. It's getting people to say, whoa, okay, well, maybe it's not just about the 2-party system. Maybe it's not just that every president is the same. Why are they treating Trump so differently? Why? They've never prosecuted any other president. George W. Bush Jr., they should have gone after him, if any president, and tried to put him in jail, tried to indict him for war crimes, which they never did. But all of a sudden, they want to go after President Trump for all of these crazy cases that are just seem to have no bearing, no merit. Even these civil cases, there's so many crazy things that we're seeing with the Jean Carroll case that it's just like, well, they just want to have that label and just slap the label on him and label him guilty, to tie him to January 6th and just label him guilty, when they may have been the ones that actually orchestrated January 6th. So it's and then Kennedy comes in, God bless, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. for coming in, because now they have to turn their attention to say, whoa, okay, wait a minute. We thought we were fighting on this front. They got a whole nother battle to fight on the other front now too. And so the divide and conquer is real, and it's between Kennedy and Trump. The divide and conquer. They will divide and they will conquer, and what they will do together, I believe, whether orchestrated or not, will make America great again. Let's continue on.
Would look like in that scenario. Kennedy wins in a landslide
No doubt.
by a
there.
margin of 176, 96 electoral vote. In fact, Biden only wins 11 states in this scenario, and RFK becomes our next president with the most bipartisan mandate in our lifetimes, drawing votes from across the political spectrum. How healing would that be?
It's a dream, because obviously there's always going to be the Republican candidate there. And when you have the most popular Republican candidate of all time, President Donald J. Trump, this scenario does seem flawed, and you can poke holes at it. And I'm sure that's what the Biden team is doing. So to tell Joe Biden, don't worry about this. There's nothing there. But there's a reason why they are putting this out there, because these are very smart people. Kennedy's campaign team, these are very, very smart people. They know exactly what they are doing. They know exactly what they are putting up. And for them to put this up here, this scenario that they know will never happen here, they know exactly what they are doing. This is calculated, and they are making a great point that requires an open mind to look beyond the fact and to say, yeah, we know President Trump, obviously, if you take him out of it, sure, that makes sense. And this is why it's like the Democrat Party, the DNC, are so blinded by whatever they are doing. They had the candidate who could actually compete and possibly beat Donald Trump, and they turned their back on him. And now Kennedy has given them one last chance to dig in and to say, you know what? This is our guy. Kennedy is our guy.
Viva Kennedy. And yet, I think given that Donald Trump seems to be pouring all of his donor dollars into his legal defense, and the courts seem to have retained a shred of their apolitical objectivity, I think we can all agree that Trump dropping out is pretty unlikely.
Yep.
So, is there any scenario in which President Trump participates in the election and doesn't win it? Yes.
Yes.
There is exactly one.
Kennedy, 2024.
And that scenario is that President Biden acknowledges that he cannot win, not in a two-way, not in a three-way. We ran them both, and makes good on his 2020 pledge not to seek re-election, and allows Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to beat President Trump.
That's also interesting there too. And they're gonna dig a little bit deeper into this 2020 pledge that Biden made. This 2020 pledge. This is the big deal that I have overlooked. I don't remember Biden making this pledge. I want to find that clip. I want to find those quotes, obviously. But the Kennedy campaign is not just going to throw that out there. They know what they're talking about. They're not going to say that if Biden didn't really say that. That's my view on it. I'll continue on here, because I think they have articulated their point.
And save us all 4 years that we dread. Now, I realize that it might seem preposterous to suggest that a candidate should drop out just because they can't win. And by being in the race, they're preventing someone who could win from doing so. I might even agree with you. But the DNC does not think it's preposterous. In fact, the DNC has been demanding that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. drop out of this race in the name of saving democracy from Donald Trump since the moment that he stepped up to offer Americans an alternative to the last 8 years of driving America in the wrong direction. The DNC surrogates have said over and over on every television show that will give them airtime that Bobby Kennedy is a spoiler, and it is time for him to drop out to save our nation from the terror of Donald Trump. So let's take another look at this term spoiler. As you heard earlier, the term spoiler requires two components to fulfill. One, you can't win. Two, by staying in the race, you prevent someone else who can win from doing so. Now, clearly, based on this 26,000 person, 0.6% margin of error data set, by far the most comprehensive data set that we have on this election, all told, this cycle. Kennedy does not fulfill that definition because whatever you might believe about his chances in a three-way, President Biden cannot win. He can't win in a two-way and he can't win in a three-way, so nobody can be a spoiler in that scenario because they're not preventing someone from winning who could otherwise. President Biden, however, does fulfill the definition of a spoiler. He cannot win in either scenario, and by being in the race, he prevents the only person who can beat Donald Trump from doing so in November. How do you like them apples? So the question is, will President Biden heed the dire pleas of the DNC and, as the spoiler responsible for handing Trump the election, bow out and let Bobby beat Trump and save democracy? Or will he hand the country back over to Donald Trump out of stubbornness? Now, maybe he thinks he's got plenty of time, right? It's 6 months out from the election. 6 months is a long time in politics, especially when you have as much money to spend on advertising as the DNC does. But let's just examine that for a minute. President Biden is the sitting president of the United States. He has the biggest bullhorn in the entire world, and he's had it for over 3 years. He's also spent $46 million on advertising already this cycle. $46 million while Americans are staying up at night trying to figure out how to pay for their groceries. We've spent around $2 million, and most of that has been in service of signature collection to even get on the ballot, which President Biden doesn't have to spend anything on. So given that his campaign has outspent ours by more than 20 to 1, has this boosted his support? Could we see this as an indicator that more spending to come could reverse what we've just seen? Well, let's take a look. So, starting with a website. Here we are, more monthly website visits, but not just that as a metric, all the metrics. We have more visits, we have longer visit duration, we have more pages per visit, we have a lower bounce rate, more page views, more engagements. There are several more pages after this, but I'm sparing you. Not everyone uses websites anymore. Some people rely on social media. Maybe that's where his advertising dollars are really shining. So Bobby and our campaign outperform Biden's campaign in both engagement and growth on every single platform. So not showing up on social media either. And you really have to ask yourself in this scenario, okay, so if spending 20 to 1 against your competition leaves your competition gaining on you in every way, maybe they're just planning to rely on President Biden turning up a charm offensive. He's got 6 months. He can convince voters to change their mind and vote for him in that time, right? The challenge there is that in August of 2023, 77% of Americans believed that President Biden was too old to seek re-election. And now 86% of Americans believe that President Biden is too old to seek re-election. At that rate, by November, it'll be near unanimous. And this isn't a disrespectful thing to say, and it isn't a disrespectful thing to consider. You know, President Biden has given decades of public service to this country. And whether or not you agree with the decisions he made during that time, there is no debating that record of public service. And the natural toll of age comes on us all, you know, don't we know it? But the Kennedy family, more than most, knows that a nuclear exchange is not impossible. Right? False alarms happen. You remember in Hawaii a few years ago, everyone got the text message that said, seek cover, nuclear inbound, say goodbye to your loved ones. And that was a mishap of the alert system, thank God. But in those moments, the President of the United States has 6 minutes, woken up in the middle of the night by Secret Service, being shuffled down the hall, gotten to safety in the most terrible physical, mental, emotional duress that you can possibly imagine. 6 minutes to decide whether or not to return fire. And with all of the beautiful checks and balances of our government, that is the one moment where the lives of my kids and the lives of your kids can be taken by one person in one single act in the blink of an eye. We can lose everything, all of human civilization, dependent on the judgment and the recall and the mental acuity of a single human being. And Americans know that. They know that underneath all of the media jamboree, that is the one most consequential, sacred responsibility of the American presidency. And knowing that, they think it's fair to ask whether the person who has that responsibility should be someone that, with sincere respect, I couldn't leave babysitting my 2-year-old while I went to the movies. It's true, you know it's true. So if that question isn't going away, in fact, it is only going to get progressively more urgent, and all the money that they've spent on social media and on websites, and by the way, their digital team is sharp. They have some great people over there. So all those great people, all of this.
Yeah, I wouldn't leave my 2-year-old with anyone, but that's just me. She's gonna get off the stage pretty soon. There's only about 7 more minutes. Kennedy comes back on, and then it really just kind of cuts out pretty quickly. So I will just play a little bit more. It's really good. It's good stuff here.
$46 million they've already spent. All of the data that we have around YouTube referrals and social media engagement and website visits, none of that has moved the needle. How is President Biden going to beat President Trump in November?
He can't.
The answer is he can't.
He can't.
And by the DNC's own diktat, that means President Biden needs to do what he said he would do in 2020. He needs to fulfill his promise not to seek re-election, step aside so Bobby Kennedy Jr. can beat Donald Trump, save us from sliding back into another 4 years of chaos.
See, I don't like the chaos thing. I don't think it was chaos. And maybe I'm wrong, but I don't remember 2016 up until 2019 being chaos. Even under COVID, I did not seem like chaos. It was a very controlled thing. Where was the only chaos was from the Democrats. So if that means, yeah, so the Democrats are going to be chaotic and they're going to create more chaos, they're going to do that anyways. It doesn't matter who gets in. And especially if the first independent president in a long time gets into office, there's going to be a lot of chaos. There's going to be a lot of crazy stuff happening because now you don't just, and think about this. The vice president is the head of the Senate, right? So now you have an independent as a, as a tiebreaker of possibly the tiebreaker of the Senate. But so if that's what the vice presidential role is, this is someone who is not bound by either party. We need that. That's a good thing. That's a great thing for this country to have. That it's not, well, Kamala Harris, it's not Mike Pence. It's someone who is not bound by either party. Maybe they'll actually get some stuff done. It can't be any worse than what we have seen with the stall tactics, with the filibusters. It can't be any worse than what we have already seen here. Kennedy getting in with an independent vice president. And there is a clip that I do want to play about his vice president because she's getting a lot of flack. We're not hearing that much from her. Yes, she has done interviews. Those interviews are out there. They're hard to find. They are out there, though. She's not hiding. She's not running. And I think she's going to make a big impact if there is not only the presidential debates, but if there is the vice presidential debates. Can you imagine Kennedy's VP sitting up there in a debate with Kamala Harris? Believe me, it's going to be a lot different than Kamala Harris versus Mike Pence. It's not going to be this, I'm speaking. It's not going to be, it's just, it's going to be very different. And we don't even know who Trump's vice presidential candidate is. He hasn't even announced it. It's taken a back burner to all of the stuff that is happening. Fascinating times to me. Let's continue on. Just about 7 more minutes. And Kennedy's going to come back on the stage very soon.
And get our country back on track. So, as promised, here is the website, kennedy24.com/spoiler. There was a QR code on there, but looks like you're going to have to type it in the old-fashioned way.
I got to check that out.
And what you will find there is all of the state-by-state results for each of these horse races, so you can dig in, digest over the next few days, reach out. We can have as many conversations as you want.
See, and it's a good conversation starter. It's good to talk about, good to think about. Just like my book is a conversation piece to show, well, Kennedy and Trump, right? It'd be great if they worked as a team. It'd be great if they, it'd be an interesting thing to have them both on the opposite sides, Hulk Hogan versus Ric Flair. But these are great conversation pieces. So I'm looking forward to learning more about this spoiler aspect of this. I just don't, I don't know. To me, it's, I don't know if there's a special, if this announcement is so special, but when Kennedy comes back on, what he says is very special here.
And with that, I'd like to turn it back over to the future president of the United States, Robert F. Kennedy.
So Amarillo is going to provide you the QR code with this extraordinarily detailed poll, and it's a treasure trove of information. One of the things that you didn't talk about, and I think you'll find interesting, is that if I remain in the race and the election was held today, President Trump would win, and President Biden would lose. If I got out of the race and the election were held today, President Trump would win, but he'd win by much more. He'd win by 2 additional states. He would win the state of Maine and the state of Virginia. And so the people who believe,
I think I mean, I think he's absolutely right here. And again, I hate to even comment or break in to what he's saying, but he is absolutely right. And I hate to break in here, but because this is the podcast covering this, I do want to commentate on this every now and then. But he's absolutely right, and we need to listen to him. You don't need to listen to this podcast. You don't need to watch this podcast, but listen to what Kennedy is saying. Please, please, for the sake of our nation, for the sake of our country, please take this man seriously. This is a serious competitor. This is a real candidate. This is somebody who can actually beat Donald Trump in a presidential election. Fair and square, not like what happened in 2020. No shenanigans. Fair and square. If Kennedy beats Trump, and I'm voting for Trump, but if Kennedy beats Trump, it's going to be fair and square. There's always going to be shenanigans a little bit, always, right? Because they always find it. Do they find it in record numbers? Do they find it in enough numbers to change the outcome is always the question. But for some people to say that this is the 2020 was the most perfect election ever, that kind of gives you a pretty good idea of where those people stand and who they stand with. So stand for something.
that I am spoiling this at this point for President Biden, need to.
He's really attacking this spoiler thing because for so long they've been saying Kennedy's a spoiler. He's spoiling. He's going to spoil. He's going to spoil that. He is not a spoiler candidate. He is the real deal. Kennedy 2024. This is the real deal. This is the candidate that the people want, the people need, the people deserve this candidate, right alongside with the greatest president ever, President Donald J. Trump, the greatest elected president ever, I should say.
Look at data.
From my view.
Again, the spoiler definition of a political candidate who cannot win, but who prevents another candidate from winning by taking away votes. This is what Joe Biden said, and President Biden said in 2020, the stakes of this election could not be higher. We only have one chance to beat Donald Trump, and we need a nominee who can get the job done.
There it is. There it is. That's what I was looking for. January 24th, 2020. Joe Biden said this. The stakes of this election could not be higher. We only have one chance to beat Donald Trump, and we need a nominee who can get the job done. That is not Joe Biden. It is not Joe Biden. With everything that we know about 2020, that is not Joe Biden. No. Left a bad taste in people's mouths and still does and will continue. The history books will record what happened. I got a whole book. I have a whole nother book that you could just look at these 4 different states, 4 to 6 states that could have changed what happened in 2020.
And hear what he pledged in 2019. If you can persuade me there's somebody better who can win, I'm happy to not do it. but I don't see the candidate who can clearly do what has to be done to win. Well,
Now, I think in fairness there, because that's in 2019, if that was after Biden walked into the White House, it may have been different. But obviously, Kennedy may not have been the best person at that time in 2019. Although I could see that that would have been a pretty good choice there. But Kennedy definitely seems like the best person to run against President Trump. There's nobody else who can run against President Trump and may actually beat President Trump. No one else.
now we can see that. And by the way, our poll is not unique. Every poll that has posed this question, a head-to-head race between President Biden and President Trump and a head-to-head race between me and President Trump, has said the same thing, that I perform much, much better against President Trump than President Biden does. Here's a poll that was done by Zogby. This was in April 2024. This is one of the reasons that I stayed in the race.
Sometimes I really want to criticize, Biden or Kennedy about the polls, but Trump goes into it too. Trump on Truth Social posts poll after poll after poll after poll. And so they believe in these polls. They understand these polls. These are politicians. They have been in this. They understand what these polls mean. They understand the impact that these polls have. So they definitely understand it a lot better than me. And I'm just jaded by it. I'm so blinded by these polls. I have no interest in these polls. To me, they mean nothing to me. And I don't know if the average voter, if they mean anything to the average voter. But to a person that is running for office, it sounds like these polls, they want to pay attention to them, obviously. They want to take them seriously. And so when Joe Biden was asked a couple weeks ago about some of these polls, well, you're not looking at the right polls, right? You're not looking at the polls that are in your favor. And that can be some of the downfall. When you only look at the polls that are in your favor, then what polls really matter, what polls don't matter, and it gets into that whole thing. What it really comes down to is, at the end of the day, what are we going to do for this country? How do we make this country great again? What are we going to do our best to make that happen? And I think for the first time in a long time, we have two good choices. It's not two wings of the same ugly bird, from my point of view. We have two really good choices. We have Kennedy and we have President Trump. And then we have to make sure, everything seems to make sure that Joe Biden doesn't get re-elected or doesn't get back in office. Or if you believe that Biden even won in 2020, right? With all of that, that's going to come out. All that's going to come out. One of the trials that Trump is involved in is going to talk about that, because they're going after him for questioning the 2020 presidential election. So any of the data, everything that he has, all that stuff is going to come out. If you look at any of the other cases that Trump has been involved with, you can clearly see that there are shenanigans. And this case, the election case, is going to be no different. There's been so many things even thrown before the case even gets started in Georgia that you can just see where all of this is going. It's the stall tactic. It's election interference, and it's all going to come to light. Whatever God's plan is, that's what's going to be done. I have no doubt, no worries about it. Whatever God wants, that is what will happen. Whoever God wants in office, that is who is going to win in 2024. It's not going to be up to me. It's not going to be up to you, but we can play our part. We can do our part to make sure that whatever can be done will be done, and God's will be done. I definitely appreciate that. Zero Infinity Live. Hello to you too. Day is good. It was a fulfilling day for people like me who I watched Kennedy's speech. I watched Trump's speech today. They both did. Trump did two speeches today. So that was pretty fun to watch. I haven't seen the whole thing. I have the replay set up ready to go, but just trying to follow this presidential election. So even like videos like this that I can use, that I can look back on. I really do appreciate everything and everyone, and I do appreciate you too. Thank you for that. Yeah, no, you get it. It's all good here. The We're not worried about the censorship here. We're not worried about, sometimes we see view counts, oh, we got this many views and all of a sudden they drop, right? The thing is, the information will get out there, and that's why I love writing. That's why I really enjoy writing books, because that is stuff that cannot be censored. So if you Zero Infinity, if you have any thoughts or anything on Kennedy or Trump, I definitely would love to hear it. I did drop the link if anybody does want to join. I'll probably be on for maybe another few more minutes. I got a few more clips to play. I do want to finish playing Kennedy's speech from today, or this special announcement, because what he's about to say, and Zero, you joined at probably a really good time here. He's about to drop some really interesting stuff here in just about 4 minutes.
Which party? Oh no, sorry, this one. This is the May of 2023 poll, and it showed me beating, in a head-to-head race, me beating President Trump. I think that's it was 14 points. No, it's 18 points.
And let's be real. Who else could beat President Trump? So I got my good hat here, right? Got the hat right here. Who else could actually beat President Trump? And Kennedy. Kennedy's the only one who can do it, and you need a Kennedy here. And there's a great video that I found. It's about 8 minutes or so that I've added to some of the clips that I've been making, but it covers the history and some of the nice comments that President Trump said about John F. K. Jr., because there's the John F. K. Jr. conspiracy. That all gets brought into this because of how Trump's relationship with John F. Kennedy Jr. So anyway, that's a whole nother issue here. I do want to try to get through this. I know I just want to keep breaking in here, but the full clip, if you do want to watch this without me, without anything, you can just go to Kennedy 24 on YouTube. You can watch this whole thing here that I'm playing. Some of this stuff is fascinating. Again, the polls I don't really care too much about, but it's still good stuff.
24 points. And me beating Governor DeSantis by even more. Oh, the other poll, which is recent.
DeSantis, you know who would have been a great VP for President Trump if he wouldn't have ran against him? Governor DeSantis. And is that why Trump has not announced who his VP is? Because he had some thoughts, he had some people in mind. Ron DeSantis would have been the perfect VP for President Trump. Kennedy would have been the best choice for the VP. And we've had that talk where Kennedy said that he was approached by some emissaries, by some people who claim to be a part of the Trump campaign. Trump has specifically said that he personally never approached Kennedy to be his VP. But it's interesting that President Trump has not announced who his VP is yet. It is coming. I'm sure it's forthcoming. And I am very curious to see who President Trump's VP will end up being and why President Trump feels the need to go after Kennedy's VP so hard. That's a whole nother issue, though.
24 TMZ poll. This is this is a significant poll because it's 56,000 people. And it also shows me trouncing President Trump. So I would, anybody who has doubts, any of the media organizations that have doubts about the outcome of our poll, these are the only polls we know about that have asked this question. I would challenge you to do your own poll and ask this question: who does better in a head-to-head race against Donald Trump? Is it me or is it President Biden?
It's you.
And that could be consequential because this is a no spoiler pledge, which we're announcing today.
Here it
This is
is.
a pledge that I offer to take if President Biden also takes it. Both parties agree to co-fund in mid-October a 50-state poll with 30,000 or more likely voters. So this is essentially effectively zero margin of error in October of 2024.
This is a big, big challenge. And I don't know if it came across, and I haven't seen too much media really cover. I know they're going to. I know The Hill is going to cover it. The Rising show, I'm sure they're going to cover it. What Kennedy's talking about here is a big, big deal because this is Kennedy extending the olive branch to Biden and to the Biden team to add pretty much to almost give Biden that out, to give him the out to walk away with a little bit, a shred of dignity. I don't think Biden's going to take it. I think Biden lives in this bubble. He's the boy in the plastic bubble. He lives in this bubble, and he's just going to think everything is fine. It's just as long as everything stays there. I don't believe Biden is being fed the right information to understand where the country is. I think he's so out of touch, and I believe that a lot of Democrats are just really out of touch, and not just the regular Democrat voter, but the people who believe that they are running the Democrat Party. Here is RFK Jr. extending the olive branch, the no spoiler pledge here. This is good stuff. And this is a last ditch effort, maybe another effort to kind of say, hey, Biden can't beat Trump. And it almost goes back to, wait a minute. I thought Biden did beat Trump in 2020. If they're so sure that Biden beat Trump in 2020, that Biden got the most votes in history, most votes of anyone ever, why wouldn't Biden be able to beat President Trump in 2024? All of this plays into the questions, the shenanigans that we have about 2020. Because if Biden was able to get the most votes ever in the history, and we know that President Trump was able to get the most votes ever of any sitting president. So in 2022, records were set, and now we are being told, well, everything looks like Biden can't beat Trump. Then how did Biden beat Trump in 2020? We have to ask ourselves that. We may have to ask ourselves that on another channel because I may be banned for even talking about this. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Most likely not.
The survey will test the results of a head-to-head race, pitting President Biden against President Trump, and a second head-to-head race pitting me against President Trump. Both parties, whoever performs weakest against President Trump in a two-man contest, will drop out of the presidential race.
Not going to happen.
This is a spoiler pledge. And by the way, I'm happy to make this same pledge, although President Trump is not a spoiler because he can actually win. I'm
love
happy
that.
to make this same pledge with President Trump.
I love Kennedy
Because
for
I
that
can do-
because Kennedy understands that Trump can win. So when we hear some of the, then sometimes, and actually in President Trump's speech, his first speech, he did two speeches today. But in the first speech, he said, they keep saying that, we have the two most unpopular candidates running, me and Biden. And I've heard Kennedy actually say that about President Trump. And Trump is like, Biden isn't popular. I'm popular, and I believe that. I believe Kennedy's very popular too, but I believe President Trump is the most popular candidate running right now. So it's nice to hear Kennedy say that he understands that President Trump can win. And you cannot win if you are not the most popular. And we can argue about Hillary Clinton. Do you really believe Hillary Clinton was the most popular candidate? Or do we just recognize that there are more voters in certain states? And that's why the popular vote does not equal the electoral college. That's why we don't vote by the most popular vote. Because if we did, then we would just have certain states that would elect our president every time. Do we want that? No. Do we want to make sure that all states have some type of a say, some fair vote? Yes, that's why we have the Electoral College. That's what I've learned. Jesse Ventura has talked about this because I was a person who thought that the popular vote should be it. The most popular person, popular vote, the most votes in all the states, whoever it is, that should be the president. Jesse Ventura changed my view on that. He changed my mind on that. He made me understand that if we did that, if we just had the popular vote, then we would just have the biggest states deciding who the president is. We don't want that. Each state needs to get their own vote. There's a reason why they have the Electoral College. All this stuff was put in place for exactly what we are going through right now. So that if there is voter fraud, if we see it, we can call it out, we can calculate it, we can tag it, we can mark it, we can earmark it for later, we can bookmark it as stuff that we can show later on. But it will be there, and they put all of these things in place. Maybe we don't catch it right when it happens, but it makes it very easy to go back and to circle back and find it and calculate it and call it for what it is. 2 minutes.
Better against President Biden than President Trump can. Of people who are frightened, who are voting for President Trump because they're frightened of President Biden, should be supporting me, and vice versa. And
see, and that's the interesting thing. I don't believe people that are frightened of President Trump, they're not going to vote. I just think that those are the people that will vote for RFK Jr. I don't believe, any of I don't know. It just seems very one-sided to me, from my view, that you have two clear choices here. Nobody really wants Biden, just like they didn't want Hillary Clinton. They want two good choices, at least, right? Every game, every sports game, you have two teams, right? If you have three teams, even better. So here we have two really popular candidates. Kennedy is a popular candidate. RFK Jr., he's a popular candidate. Then we have the most popular candidate ever in the history, which is President Trump. And then they tell us that Joe Biden is got the most votes of any president nominee ever. Okay, sure. And how is he doing now? And you're telling me 4 years later, they all just turned on him? I believe. Come on.
ultimately,
Come on.
I think what we all want in this election is that for Americans not to feel that they have to vote out of fear,
Yep.
that they feel that they can vote out of hope. And that is only going to happen if there's a two-way race between me and President Trump.
It's only going to happen if we have that third choice. RFK Jr. is that third choice. Because many of us we're not voting out of fear. We're not voting for the lesser of two evils. So they're like saying, well, now we have two good choices. So they're recognizing we have two good choices. We have Kennedy and we have Trump. We have two good choices. That means we have one bad choice. And the bad choice is Joe Biden. It's the same bad choice that we were given in 2020. And somehow he got more votes than anyone in the history ever. I mean, I can't even comprehend it. It's so crazy. It's so crazy. I lost my headphones here. But we got more. He's just more votes than anyone ever has ever happened. It's just, it's so ridiculous. So ridiculous to think. Anyways, okay, I went a little way too far off there, but I think you get what I'm saying here. I think you understand what I'm saying. You YouTubers are pretty good. You understand exactly what I'm saying. And people that will see this on Spotify later on, the Kennedy and Trump podcast that I'm now putting on Spotify as I replay this stuff, you will see exactly this. And what I like about Spotify, by the way, if you're a podcaster, if you like to listen to podcasts while you're working or doing other things, you will find this on Spotify. What is Truth podcast? Greg Fernandez Jr. You'll find it there. The link will start to show up. The Spotify link will start to show up in the description of these videos. So if you just want to, just listen to what the Spotify show says, while you're doing other things, that option will also be there too. Just cool. I'm just really excited to get back into this Spotify thing. I always love podcasting. I love radio. I love old school radio, and Spotify is probably the closest I'm ever going to get back into old school radio. For now, you never know. You never know. But just some of the things that they expect us to believe. Like I said, we have two good choices, and they just doesn't that mean we have one bad choice? Doesn't that mean that Joe Biden is the bad choice? Yeah, of course, it's the bad choice. But he got the most votes ever of any person, any presidential candidate, anything walking around God's green earth. He got the most. That's it. It's so crazy that we are expected to believe this. Well, here's what we're going to do. Either way, Kennedy 2024, President Trump 2024, that is how we can make America great again and again and again and again. All right. It's another minute here. And that's it. And they cut the stream pretty quickly.
Me and President Biden. The other thing is, if you picture what this country is going to look like in November, if either President Trump or President Biden won, the division is going to continue, the anger, the vitriol, the chaos, the polarization is going to worsen.
That's going to continue even if Kennedy wins, I think.
The only way to end that is through my successful candidacy. I want to thank all.
It may actually be even worse because now you have two systems coming after the independent person. But we'll see. Who knows? I think it'll be a great thing if Kennedy does win. When he wins, even if he doesn't win in 2024, when he wins in 2028 and 2032, I think it's going to be a great thing.
Thank you for coming out here today. God bless you. Thank you very much.
There you go. So that's where it kind of feels like Kennedy is asking. Maybe I didn't understand this here. I haven't heard too much media yet. I think the media, they're still trying to figure out what just happened here. What did we just see here? But it really sounds to me like Kennedy is asking Biden to step aside and just let this be a two-man race. We've been hearing that the DNC, that in June, in the DNC, their convention where they officially nominate their candidate, that it won't be Joe Biden. I just don't believe that. I think it's going to be Joe Biden. They're locked in. They have to go with Joe Biden, kicking and screaming, reluctantly, understanding that, well, let's look to 2028. And I think that's where they're really going. But so I don't believe any of these theories that Joe Biden is not going to be the Democratic nominee. I think he's going to be the Democratic Party nominee. President Trump will be the Republican Party nominee. And then you will have RFK Jr., who is not Ross Perot. It's not a Ross Perot scenario. This is a Kennedy. Not only a Kennedy, this is one of the Kennedys. If you had 4 Kennedys, the 4 horsemen of the Kennedys, you would have John F. Kennedy, the president, John F. Kennedy. You would have Robert F. Kennedy, Senator Robert F. Kennedy. I wouldn't put Edward Kennedy. I wouldn't Teddy Kennedy. I would not put him in there. Number 3, you would have John Jr. You'd have him in there. You'd have John F. Kennedy Jr. in there as number 3. And number 4, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. The history, everything that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has done, I believe, is better than anything than the other 3 people have done. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is able to take it to the next level. I don't know if any of the other 3 would have been able to. But Robert F. Kennedy Jr. can and will continue to, no matter what happens. This will not be the last that we see of Kennedy. He will continue on. Win, lose, or whatever else happens, he will continue on. And it will be great for this country. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has done so many great things for this country. Fighting Monsanto, beating Monsanto in lawsuit that the media doesn't want to talk about. They don't want to cover that. They don't want to hear anything about that. They want RFK Jr. to go away because a lot of the issues that a lot of us have been talking about, that we've been, educated on, like myself, I've been listening to other people talk about them. When you research them, when you look at it, they don't want you talking about Monsanto. Because if you do, it's going to stir up this hornet's nest about other issues, other health issues, economic issues, environmental issues, real environmental issues. And that's one of the things that bothers me when President Trump calls Kennedy a radical environmentalist or the Green New Deal and all that stuff. That's not what Kennedy is. Kennedy is not a Green New Deal. He's not a Green New Deal spokesperson. Kennedy is a real environmentalist. When you look at what you want from a real person who cares about the environment, who is able to litigate and who is able to regulate and who is able to make sure that we can protect our environment, that we can protect our ecosystem, protect our fish from mercury, protect our lakes, our rivers, the water keepers. Kennedy is the guy who has done it. He's been there, done that. To get him in office, the guy who has sued President Trump, or before he was President Trump, who has sued Donald Trump and won, the guy who has sued President Biden and won, who was in this lawsuit with Google, fighting the censorship, everything that Kennedy is doing, that's the guy you want in office. You want him in office. The reason why I want Trump in office first is because Trump has a job to finish. And I believe Trump got a raw deal. This was a bad decision. If you've ever seen the wrestling match, the first wrestling match between Hulk Hogan and The Undertaker, Hulk Hogan got screwed. The Undertaker won because of outside interference. Just happened to be Ric Flair. Then Hulk Hogan won. There were more shenanigans. And in the end, it came down to a Royal Rumble match where Ric Flair won. So we'll see. We'll see what happens here. I'm very curious to see what happens. I am definitely ranting and raving. I did see this video. I thought this was a really cool 2-minute video. And I did want to see if I could share this. This may be a great way to kind of end this here. Let's do it.
Dear Democrats, if you really want to stop Trump, then you can vote for Biden. Hold on, don't swipe, let me explain. With Kennedy on the ticket, Biden loses to Trump. And that's just reality. Oh, can't you see this could be so easy? If you all vote Bobby, then Trump won't get it. Oh, dear Democrats, you better vote for Kennedy. He's not going anywhere. He'll be on the ticket. So now's your chance to beat Trump. Just vote for Bobby Kennedy. Dear Democrats, I urge you to listen to Bobby yourself. If you prefer propaganda and can't be asked to listen, then enjoy President Trump. Oh, dear Democrats, this could be so easy if only you take the time. I urge you to consider Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Good stuff. Wow, that was great. That was awesome. I love that. That is from, I saw Kennedy just post that on his Twitter account there. So that was great. I mean, I probably should end it with that right there. But you know what? Instead, I'm going to, there's a few other things I did want to play. What's the time here? Some of us do have to work, but I am going to play a little bit of this here, and we will see. We'll be right back here.
Crowds gather in Upper Manhattan as former President Trump visits a bodega.
This is the moment Mr. Trump arrived tonight. People lined up along 139th and Broadway as he made his way inside the Hamilton Heights bodega to meet with Jose Alba. Alba is the bodega worker who fatally stabbed the man in July of 2022 in a case of self-defense.
On Tuesday, he used a Harlem bodega as a backdrop to slam Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg for being what he calls soft on crimes that matter.
Without a doubt, very much supported here in Harlem.
If there was ever any time in the last 200 years that an independent candidate could win the presidency, it's now. Even the traditional mainstream media admits that 2/3 of Americans don't want to see a contest between President Trump and President Biden alone. My opponents are worried, which is why you're seeing so many dirty tricks attacks and condemnation of me by both President Biden and President Trump and the Republican and Democratic parties. Today, for the first time in American history, self-identified independents outnumber both Republican and Democratic voters. And independents favor me over President Biden or President Trump. I was particularly interested in a recent poll by NBC, which never gives me favorable treatment, but which acknowledged that 34% of Americans would consider voting for me. And in a three-way race, 34% is enough to win the election. Currently, polls show that about 20% of Americans have never heard of me and don't know that I'm running for president. So we have some work to do to get the word out about my campaign, but we also have a tremendous amount of headroom. Virtually everybody in our country knows that President Biden and President Trump are running. So they don't have much room to grow their supporters. And very few people are likely to change their minds about who among those two is the lesser of two evils. And keep in mind that when pollsters publish their surveys, they exclude those people who they consider unlikely voters. Based on historical records, they consider young people highly unlikely to vote. But what would happen if young people actually became excited about a candidate, as has happened in the past? They could provide a decisive margin of victory to my campaign. During the civil rights movement and the Vietnam era, young people who had never voted before in great numbers suddenly began voting in overwhelming numbers, and they changed the national debate. And guess what? Young people support me at a much higher margin, and they support either President Trump or President Biden. Young people are disgusted by the division. They're dismayed by the forever wars. They understand that they're not going to live the American dream, that they're not going to get their own homes, and they want somebody who's listening to them, and I'm that somebody. I'm going to end the forever wars, and I'm going to use the peace dividend to make sure that our young people get into homes and that they can have equity so that they can pursue their entrepreneurial impulses and rebuild America and small business in this country again. I can win the presidency, but I can't do it alone. I need your help. We have an FEC filing deadline on April 30th. That's very, very important to our campaign. Let's show the political establishment that Americans this time around are not going to be manipulated again by fear. They're going to vote for a candidate that they actually want to see as president. Please contribute to my campaign as much as you can. There is no more important time than now to donate.
Donald Trump's surprise visit to a construction site. Hundreds of cheering union members turned out to meet the former president. It was quite a scene.
These are hardworking New Yorkers, okay, union members who have been working on this big construction site here in Midtown Manhattan near Trump Tower.
USA, USA, USA. I think these maybe were Democrats, but for me, they're a Republican. We built a lot of great buildings in the city with these people. And they've given me great support. They're very, very talented people. They don't get the credit for it. They have very few people can do what they do.
These union workers who are here to talk to the president are paying the price of failed economic policies currently in the country.
And you heard in New York City chants of "We want Trump."
We love Trump. We love Trump. We love Trump.
A lot of people are talking about how unusual it is to see so many Trump supporters in Manhattan at 4, 5, 6 in the morning. Does that surprise you?
No, absolutely not.
President Trump is leading Joe Biden 3-1 on my presidential poll out of my 9,000 members.
Trump's turn again. What's your message to Joe Biden?
You. We're a very patriotic group, and we love our country, and we want the best for America.
We're right now fighting Democrats, Republicans, and I don't think it's Democrats and Republicans. I think that's a stage show. I think it is the elites and the people.
It's a populace and like a class war, like you say, populism is easily hijacked by demagogues.
Yes.
But it doesn't necessarily have to be dark.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be fascism or Nazism.
Yes.
It was the populist movement in our country in 1903 that got rid of the Gilded Age, and we got the 40-hour work week. We had the child labor. We got women the vote. We got the Sherman Antitrust Act passed, and we made corporations to pay taxes for the first time. We're seeing a revolution in this country that's going to happen. You can't have a situation, 57% of the people in this country can't put their hands on $1,000 if they have an emergency. 54% of the people in this country are not making enough money to pay for basic human needs. And there's going to be a revolution. And is it going to be captured by dark regressive forces? Or are we going to be able to keep it as an expression of idealism?
We're impoverishing the oceans. You say there's 100 million sharks killed a year.
Yeah, over 100 million sharks killed every single year, yet fewer than 10 fatalities. And they're like the doctors of the ocean, so it's so important to protect them. And everything has its balance and its place in the ecosystem, and that does impact human lives as well. And there's really nothing quite like being in the presence of a shark. They have this instinctual sort of commanding presence. And that is beautiful to experience.
I've watched declining sharks over my lifetime. They were much more common when I was a kid. And the populations now are down to about 10% that they have been historically, and almost all of that comes from one industry, which is shark finning, to fulfill the demand for shark fin soup in China.
Yeah, so the demand does come from China, but so many countries around the world are killing sharks and shipping fins over there. And that's why it's so important that the U.S. doesn't participate in that global fin trade. It's just a wasteful thing. And then on top of that, it's the devastation that it's causing to fisheries and coral reefs. You're a great diver. It's really,
Thank
really
you.
impressive.
Thanks for everything that you do.
Thank you.
Why did the price of housing go up? Because we spent $8 trillion on wars and $16 trillion on COVID, which we didn't have. They print money, which caused the price of everything to go up. 2 years ago, the average cost of a house in this country was $215,000. Today it's $400,000. There's three giant corporations, BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard. They also own 89% of the S&P 500. They've now decided to buy every single family home in America. If they stay on the current trajectory, they will own 60% of the homes in this country, single family homes, by 2030. But your kids do not have a chance to buy that home because they can't outcompete BlackRock. I'm going to change the tax code to make it unprofitable for those companies to compete against your children.
Yes.
I'm going to make a mortgage available to Americans at 3% interest. I'm going to finance those mortgages by selling tax-free bonds on the open market, available to first-time home buyers who will live in that country.
That's the only reason why why we were able to even buy a home. And if the average is 400,000, that's pretty much what we bought our home for, at about 3%. Only under COVID, only because of the COVID thing and because of God, because of the grace of God. But this is sad to hear what we are hearing. And he's right on point.
Community who will work in that community. S&P 500. They've now decided to buy every single family home in America. If they stay on the current trajectory, they will own 60% of the homes in this country, single family homes, by 2030. But your kids do not have a chance to buy that home because they can't outcompete BlackRock. I'm going to change the tax code to make it unprofitable for those companies to compete against your children's housing. I'm going to make a mortgage available to Americans at 3% interest. I'm going to finance those mortgages by selling tax-free bonds on the open market, available to first-time home buyers who will live in that community, who will work in that community. We need to create housing for teachers to keep the best teachers in our schools.
Amen.
Hey, everybody.
Amen.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr. here with some great news. As of today,
Hey, man, I just want to say, I mean, that's to make it unprofitable, because then they will move on to some other thing. These corrupt people, they will move on to, they'll be forced to, because there's no profit in what they are doing. So to make it affordable for the American people and to make it unprofitable for these people that want to exploit these systems, that is a great thing. Trump has done that with the commercial industries. We've seen him do that with the automobile industries, with companies. They make it not profitable. You want to make it profitable for your companies to create things inside of the USA. You have to do that in order to make our country thrive, right? If you want to be a globalist and you can do that. We can continue to do what we've been doing, which is drain the resources from these other countries for profit. But if you change the game, change the tax code, like he was saying, that's one thing, but change the game, do what Trump, continue with what Trump was doing, was to make it unprofitable for these companies to do anything outside of this country, right? Don't give them an incentive for these companies to stay in the U.S. And the problem is, we can see it on the local level in our cities, in San Francisco and these certain cities where we see they're just creating this environment where it's not even profitable. Why would these companies want to stay here? The big companies. So if the big companies can't even make a profit in these cities, how are these smaller companies going to do it? They can, and they will struggle, and they will strive, and it can be done. It's not like it can't be done, but let's not make it hard for them where they have to penny pinch just to keep their business going. And then at the same time, we have bailouts, and at the same time, they can go overseas and they can make huge profits and then call themselves a USA company. Can't have it both ways. So that's what I've loved about Trump, what he was doing to bring the country back. And that's how you're going to make America great again, to keep the jobs in this great nation and not to outsource, which is what we've been seeing, a lot of outsourcing. Hey, my brother, how are you? Nice to chat with you. Always a pleasure. Thank you. And I'm just sitting here, just chatting. I've got a few more clips, and then I'll probably shut this one down unless anyone wants to join me. I did leave the link. I don't know if it's still up there or not, but or else, yeah, I got one or two more clips to play, and then I will shut this one down. But there is another one that I did want to play, maybe two more from RFK Jr.'s website. And Rick, if you missed that one from his Twitter account, I may have to play that for you again, just for you, because it's amazing. As someone, I know you're doing your drum thing and everything. It's pretty funny. It's good. I don't know. I may just have to play it just for you to end this here. But let me go ahead and I will share this. One of the biggest things that we don't hear too much about is Kennedy's VP. Trump has gone after the VP more than Trump has gone after Kennedy. So maybe I'll play a little bit of that here as well. All right, so this is from Kennedy's YouTube channel at Team Kennedy 24. And I do want to play, which one should I play first? Biden is a real spoiler. Yeah, let's go with that one. Why not?
Hello, everyone. My name is Jonathan Hiller, and I'm the Director of Content at Team Kennedy. And today we're going to be talking about numbers.
Nerd alert!
All right, by now you probably know that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is running as an independent candidate for President of the United States. But you probably have heard him spoken about like this.
Spoiler candidate, a spoiler.
Spoiler.
Called Kennedy a spoiler. I'm a spoiler.
But is this really true? I mean, is Bobby really a spoiler in this election? We looked into it, and now we have the answers. Now, the preface here is that most polls are conducted by mainstream media outlets.
The answer is
and
no.
typically they have 1,000 to 3,000 or so respondents per poll. And most of those polls have about a plus or minus 3% margin of error. Well, we conducted a nationwide poll of over 25,000 respondents, and our margin of error was 0.6%. That makes it by far the most accurate predictor of the 2024 election that we have thus far. All right, let's dive into the maps. This is the head-to-head matchup between Biden and Trump. Trump with 294 and Biden with 244. Trump wins by 50 electoral votes. And if you're a political nerd like myself, you know that that is not very close. And with Bobby as a third-party candidate, Biden only picks up 2 additional states, so he still loses to Trump. All right, now here is where it gets very interesting. In a head-to-head matchup, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. wins 367 electoral votes versus Joe Biden's 171. Now that is what we call a landslide. And what's even crazier about these numbers is when you look at the ad spend of these two campaigns. Biden has spent over $36 million in advertising since October 1st, and we have spent a little over $2 million. Now, the next head-to-head matchup that we pulled was Bobby versus Trump. Obviously, this is a very close election, but Bobby still wins. All right, so to recap, Biden cannot beat Trump in a head-to-head race, and it is not close. Biden cannot beat Trump in a 3-way race, and it's still not very close. Bobby wins in a landslide against Biden head-to-head, and Bobby beats Trump head-to-head. So wait, who is actually the spoiler here? Because a spoiler is a non-winning candidate whose presence on the ballot affects which candidate wins. A non-winning candidate affecting a possible winning candidate. So if you do not want to see Donald Trump become the next president of the United States, there is only one candidate running who has the power to beat him, and it is Robert F. Kennedy Jr. All right, what's the next one? There's just one more. I gotta like that one. Okay. I have been really wanting to hear from Kennedy's VP. I'm very curious. So I want to hear, this is about a 2.5 minute clip. And let's look at Kennedy's VP.
I'm Nicole Shanahan. I am a California licensed attorney. I'm a tech entrepreneur, an AI legal theorist, and a mom. My mom immigrated to the United States in 1983 from Guangzhou, China. She came to Oakland and was a live-in caretaker while she went to school. Oakland is a place where you take in the rawness that is life and you learn to heal in community through it. My father did have a hard time keeping a job. He struggled with substance abuse and various mental health challenges. We relied on government assistance for a good portion of my childhood. Every time my dad lost a job, there wasn't a lot of money to cover basic expenses like food. Sorry, I'm gonna cry. Whew. It was hard. It's really hard. But I took that opportunity to go inside myself and find the person and spirit that I am. And I really do believe that it is what has set me up for being a person that works really hard to find compassion through challenging moments. We are at a point in America today that we've never been in before. And I believe that in a time of growing division, it requires us to have the empathy that leads us to activism, that allow us to see eye to eye on our mutual goals. And those issues dearest to my heart are environmental health, social justice, the astronomical rate of chronic disease in America, especially in our children. Borders that feel fair, and going back to our roots as being a diplomatic leader globally. I believe in my heart that we are a mature enough country and a mature enough scientific community to allow this kind of inquiry forward. And in order to do that, it's going to take communities who really believe that working together is going to get us to a healthier America with solutions that actually work. We deserve a real election of optimism. And that's what Bobby Kennedy gives us a chance at.
Hard to argue with that, right? I would think it's something we can all agree on. And that's another side of this candidate that we don't hear too much from. Well, thank you, Zero. Appreciate that. Got to make that money. Got to go to work, and that's how we live. So nothing wrong with that. Hope you have a great night too. Just want to play maybe one or two more clips for all of us late nighters. I'm at 2 hours here. The podcast should just go about 1 hour or so. But I'm going to just hang on here for just a little bit longer. And we're going to play just maybe some of these more. Kennedy getting on the ballot in California to me is such a big deal. As a California native, I wasn't in Oakland, California, but Oakland is rough, man. Oakland is tough. And for anyone that lives in Oakland and just grew up there and just, it's a whole nother world, it seems like. As an outsider, it seems like it's just a whole nother world there in Oakland, and just a tough environment. Not something I would wish on anyone to live there. And this goes back to where, we want to make the country great again, and we want to help these other countries, but we look at our own country and we look at our own cities and our own ghettos, and we see how bad these things are. We see how bad the environment is, and we see how far we have come, and how much help the people right here, how much help they need. And if a country can't help itself, it can't help their own people, how can they help other people? So when we, as this country moves into these other countries and they do the same thing that they do to their own people, we have to question that. And I think that's why we needed Trump. And I think that's why we need Kennedy. And I think they both, when it comes to really making America great again, I believe Kennedy and Trump are on the same page. And I hope that's what my book will reflect. Just to take this short time in history and to show that we had two guys here almost, I don't know if they're opposites or not, but they're just two completely different people, not politicians. And they're able to successfully run two successful presidential campaigns in the same year at the same time. It's just like worlds colliding here, right? Ultimate Warrior, Hulk Hogan. I like the Hulk Hogan Ric Flair better. I really like that because I like to equate Donald Trump as the dirtiest player in the game, Ric Flair, and I like to think of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as the Hulk Hogan. But however it is, there's the similarities, the things that these two candidates have brought and where they have brought us to in this country. This is a good thing. This is, I mean, we have reached the point. I mean, back in 911, even if you go back to when we were before some of us were even born that may watch this or may listen to this or may hear about this later on, if you go back to John F. Kennedy's murder, but they murdered the president, they killed the president, and the due diligence was not done. How would I expect due diligence to be done on somebody like David Crowley? How would I expect that with 911? I mean, if they're able to kill a president, to kill the president of the United States, it shows the level, the people that we are dealing with. And, that's their playbook. The playbook changes. They rewrite it. They update it. Just like any computer program, you update it. You don't keep the program the same way. It's always ever changing. But you do have that foundation. The program started somewhere. It didn't come out of nowhere. So we go back and we go back and we try to understand, where did the program start here? And it'll all take you back to Genesis. It'll all take you back to the scripture, to the Bible, to one man, one woman. It'll all take you back to the devil and the fall of Lucifer. It'll all take you back to all of that stuff. It's all the same thing. So you can go back, go back, go back. However far back you want to go, you will find the same answer. And the more that you seek, the more that you will find. I believe that. And here we are today, where we have a candidate here, a real candidate, who is going to be on the ballot. If you're in California, he's on your ballot. He's going to be there. He will be there. Let's hear 5 minutes from that candidate.
Hey, everybody. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. here with some great news. As of today, Nicole and I are officially on the ballot in California, the largest of all the electoral college states. I want to tell you the story of how it happened. A journalist recently asked me whether I considered myself a populist, and she used that term as if it were a dirty word. I answered, yeah, I'm a populist, the same way that my father was a populist. And I explained to her that populism is often motivated by idealistic impulses and motivations to take government back from corrupt elites, but it can also be captured by demagogues for darker purposes, to spur division, hatred, polarization, and bigotry. I gave her the example of my father's 1968 campaign. In 1968, my father launched a populist movement that captured the imagination of all kinds of cross-section of the American public, of white Americans, working class, middle class Americans, cops, firefighters, union members, Black Americans, white Americans, people on the Indian reservation, in the Mississippi Delta, farm workers in California, and poor people in Appalachia. 4 years after my father's death in 1972 during the presidential election, many of those white Americans who had strongly supported my father in 1968 turned their vote that year not to George McGovern, who was aligned with my father on almost every issue, but they supported instead George Wallace, a bigoted segregation supporter who was antithetical to everything my father believed in. And I told her that it struck me then, and it's occurred to me many times since, that every nation, like every individual, has a darker side and a lighter side, and that the easiest thing for a politician to do is to appeal to our bigotry and our hatred and anger and xenophobia and our fear and all of these darker, low vibration impulses. The more difficult thing is what my dad tried to do and what I'm trying to do during this election, which is to get people to step away from their narrow self-interest, to transcend the lower impulses of bigotry and anger and fear, and see themselves as part of a great adventure, and see themselves as heroes who are willing to take a risk and to look at all the people in their community and understand that we have to avoid the seduction of the idea that we can only advance ourselves by leaving our poor brothers and sisters behind. We have to go forward as a community, as a nation, as a family. Well, it turns out that when you speak from your heart the way that I did that way, that the ripples extend outward and reach corners that you never expected. In this case, those ripples reached the American Independence Party of California and inspired in their new leadership the idea that they might want to participate in my campaign. Ironically, the American Independence Party was George Wallace's old party, but it's had its own rebirth even before I came along. It's been reborn as a party that represents not bigotry and hatred, but rather compassion and unity and idealism and common sense. When they learned about my candidacy, they had just drafted a new charter for their reborn party, where they could use their ballot line for good, for helping independent candidates to unite America without being blocked by the two-party duopoly. After hearing my interview, they began researching me and our effort, and they found out that we already had thousands of volunteers working across the country in various states, including California, to get me on the ballot. They were so impressed by this outpouring of Democratic energy and vigor that they approached my campaign and offered us their spot on the California ballot. I see this story as a symbol of America's homecoming to an authentic populism of unity, peace, and prosperity, an evolution beyond the divisive years of President Trump and a return to the Kennedy vision, a country where government serves the people, where the people serve one another, and where our nation serves its idealistic mission as an exemplary nation, an example of democracy around the globe. That's why it's with a great sense of personal optimism that I proudly accept the American Independent Party's offer of ballot access here in California. Most of all, I want to extend my deepest gratitude to the tens of thousands of California volunteers who have worked for my campaign on the sidewalks, in the malls, at the ball games, in front of the grocery stores, to sign up California voters for the We the People Party to achieve the same end. It was the scale of your efforts and the depth of your commitment that inspired the AIB to come to me and offer me this easy way to get my name on the ballot for the President of the United States from California. You can all be proud that you've laid the foundation for a mighty organization that will support independent candidates for years into the future. I hope you'll all join with me in celebrating this victory, and I hope that, like me, you're going to wake up in the morning excited to enter a new phase of the California campaign. God bless you all.
Final thing, what do you think of the RFK Jr. independent campaign and the Democrats' relentless attacks on him?
Well, I think he's a nice guy. I've known him. He's extremely liberal. He's more liberal than anybody. He's more liberal than the Green Party. And so I don't know. I would imagine he'd not be good for them. But you don't know how that plays out. He gets a certain, not many points, but he gets some. But they say he hurts Biden. I'm not sure that that's true. I think he probably hurts both. But he might hurt Biden a little bit more. You don't know. But he's got, not a lot of points, but maybe enough points to make a difference one way or the other. But he's a very liberal guy.
I'm curious, when you see that the polling showing the weakness that that Joe Biden has now among Democrats about something that he literally can't change, which is his age. I mean, you can shift policy, you can try and do something on the border, you can try and goose the economy. You cannot change your age.
In terms of President Biden's age, I think, age is not really relevant. There are people who are 80 years old, 85, 90 years old, who have a very, very strong mental acuity and cognitive capacities. I think that the questions about President Biden right now, because of a number of public gaffes, and his unwillingness to have unscripted conversations or encounters with voters, to do a debate, to do actual interviews with people. And even when he does scripted ones, there's it's scary for people to watch.
All right. Well, that may.
And I think a lot of Americans are worried. This is a job that requires complex thinking. It requires nuance. We all want somebody who can answer that phone at 3:00 in the morning and make a good judgment call at that point.
And that's definitely not Joe Biden. Okay, well, I think I will end it right there. God bless you all. Again, remember, Jesus Christ loves you. We will be back. Lots more to cover. We're here till November at the very latest. And definitely the book will continue to grow, to build, and I'll continue to keep on writing. And just remember, Jesus Christ loves you all. God bless.